I feel like one of those terms that we all know what it means, but it's a little hard to define is the players that you bet against in sports or the players that you don't bet against in sports, right? Oh, you don't bet against that guy. Well, what does that mean? I don't know how to describe it, but you know what it means, right? And these are the players, these are the 9 quarterbacks that I do bet against in sports. The guys who have maybe not necessarily consistently been, good enough for me to feel comfortable saying, yeah, you're going to live up to the hype this game. That's just kind of how I view it. So without further ado, these are the 9 quarterbacks that I do bet against, or at least maybe the better way to phrase it is that I feel comfortable betting against. Number 9 is a hot take, right? Right off the bat, putting Josh Allen on this list is tough. And again, I was going to do a top 10 list, but I really didn't feel comfortable putting a 10th guy on here. Even Josh Allen, I didn't love putting on this list, but he has had some moments where he hasn't played as well. I think he's had more moments, maybe not more moments, but as many moments where he has played very well, but he's kind of, he's Josh Allen. You're supposed to be playing well more consistently than he has been playing well. I didn't think he had a great playoff run last year. I thought the year before he had maybe the best playoff run of all time. That was only 2 games long, where they destroyed the Patriots, and then he obviously had that great game against Kansas City. But there's other rougher games. You could talk about the Texans playoff game. That was before he was good. I don't know how much you hold that against him, but even the conference championship against Kansas City was not overly impressive. So I think that he gets too much criticism for the Bills' big game struggles. So I don't know if it's totally fair to put him on the list, but got to get 9 guys on the list. He's number 9. Number 8, give me Dak Prescott, someone who, listen, another guy who it's like, I think a lot of people would have him higher on the list. I don't necessarily know if he underperforms in the big moments necessarily. I feel like he's kind of just performs what he is in the playoffs, which is like a good player. But when you're going up against the best of the best, when you're going up against these great teams like San Francisco seemingly every year, I think there's kind of a ceiling on how far he can take you. And that's kind of why he's someone who I bet against. So in a regular season, can he, pull off some big wins? Absolutely. And even in the playoffs against maybe some not great teams, like my favorite team, Tampa Bay last year, he was able to look great there. But in a big spot, do I bet on him? Just not really. And it's not really because I think he's terrible or anything like that. And it's not because I think he's a choker either. I just think there's a ceiling on that kind of player. Number 7, Kirk Cousins, who I kind of feel similarly about. I actually kind of like Cousins more than maybe the average person does. I think he does some nice things. But at the end of the day, you could definitely argue Cousins should be higher just due to all the primetime losses. For whatever reason, primetime, he's a complete mess. It feels like he has had some decent playoff performances, and he has had some decent primetime performances. He has had some decent big game moments as well. To me, he feels similarly to Prescott, although a little bit worse because of the primetime stuff. And just in that, I think there's a cap on how that kind of player can take you. Like, he is kind of just someone who's a good player, but not necessarily the superstar, and there's only so far he can take you. Number 6, I'm going Kyler Murray, which sucks because he's so young. It feels unfair to put him on this list. He could definitely turn it around for sure. But as of right now, I think I have to put him on this list just because he's someone who, the Cardinals kind of melted down in that one playoff game, and then he followed up with a really bad season. So it's like, I want to bet on Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's electric when he's awesome, and I want to bet on him, but as of right now, I don't see how I could. Number 5, I'm going Tannehill here. Ryan Tannehill, someone who, listen, the reality is he has won some playoff games, won a lot of games. Another guy who I like. I think he's probably underrated in the regular season and just underrated in general, I would say. But again, there's a cap on this kind of player. Can he win you a Super Bowl? Probably not. And the one way they could have won a Super Bowl was in that, one year where they got the 1 seed. Derrick Henry was hurt, but then he came back for that playoff game. And really, Tannehill was kind of he threw 3 interceptions in that game. He was kind of the reason they lost that playoff game. And, when they did go on that run to the conference championship against Kansas City, he didn't have to do much of anything. He was barely throwing the ball that time. So while I like Tannehill, again, this isn't necessarily, I'm not necessarily saying any of these players are bad players. They're just the players I don't bet on. And Ryan Tannehill, not someone I bet on. Number 4 is Deshaun Watson. I mean, it's kind of, again, with all the craziness that went on these past couple of years with Deshaun Watson, I think we kind of forget Deshaun Watson's had some tough playoff performances. I mean, that game against the Colts he was just bad in that game. He was really bad in that game against Indianapolis, and a big reason why they lost that playoff game. And then he, after that playoff game, and when we went on to the a little bit later on, there was that weird Bills game, which he did some nice things in the Bills game. He had that great overtime play, but it still wasn't a great performance from him. And then he followed up with blowing a 24-point lead against the Chiefs that he did have something to do with. He could have help them keep scoring and move that line a little bit so that you're not allowing the Chiefs to come back in the first half from down 24. So for Deshaun Watson, yeah, I think he belongs on this list. I have him here at number 4. Number 3, I am going Jared Goff, which, listen, Lions fans are going to be mad. Lions fans love Jared Goff now. I get it. But the reality is, when he was with the Rams, the reason they got rid of him was because he wouldn't show up in the big moments. If you want to, you could argue that this is too low for him at number 3. But here's why I still have him. There's still a couple guys I have ahead of him. I thought he did really good in that NFC Championship game against the Saints. Everyone kind of remembers it for that, bad call. But, they still had to march down the field and get a field goal, and he was able to pull that off. So he did do some good stuff to get them to the Super Bowl before completely collapsing in that game. So, he belongs on the list. But at number 3, there's still a couple guys who I would bet against worse. Number 2 is Jimmy Garoppolo, who, again, I mean, how can you not put this guy on the list, right? I mean, there's a real chance that if he just plays, not spectacularly, if he just plays like Jimmy Garoppolo in the playoffs, do the 49ers potentially have 2 Super Bowl rings? It's possible because, the Super Bowl that they went to with Garoppolo, he obviously missed that deep pass that could have potentially been a touchdown to give them the lead. Kansas City had some time left after that, but still, there were some other missed throws that allowed Kansas City to come back. Kyle Shanahan gave Garoppolo the ball, and he promptly threw it into the dirt, it seemed like, or threw it right into Chris Jones' hands. So because of that, there was that big loss, but it wasn't just that one. Also, the divisional round against the Rams, I didn't think that not divisional round, conference championship game against the Rams, I didn't think he played very well in that one either. So it's like, you had some real opportunities to get to the Super Bowl and weren't able to, or win a Super Bowl and weren't able to pull it off, and you were partially to blame. Yeah, you're here at 2. But number 1 on this list, you knew who it was going to be. It's got to be Aaron Rodgers, the only player who has a Super Bowl ring on this list, interestingly enough. But that was a while ago. I mean, we're talking well over a decade ago at this point, and I do think that it was, it was a very different situation, a very different time, a very different Aaron Rodgers, who, listen, I don't know what it is. Rodgers has had some good playoff performances. People love to bring up the just overall statistics with Aaron Rodgers and say, actually, his numbers are pretty good. Kind of. They're good in the wild card round, and that heavily skews the rest of the grades. Rest of the stats. If you look at it, per round, well, you see that his wild card numbers are good. His divisional round goes down a little bit. The conference championship goes way down, and that's really where the playoff choker label comes from. And so again, I'm not saying he's a playoff choker, but he's someone I bet against, and part of it's because it's fun to bet against Aaron Rodgers. That's just an entertaining thing to do, also. So again, it's a completely subjective list. Don't get too angry about it in the comments below, or do whatever makes you have entertainment out of this video I made. As long as you're having fun with it. If part of the fun is arguing in the comments, have at it. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Those are the 9 players I bet against. Who do you bet against? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.